The Indianapolis Colts, you could not live with your failure. You've lost three straight. Two out of three of those losses have come with Joe Flacco at quarterback. And where did that bring you? Back to Anthony Richardson. And this was a move that had to happen. Joe Flacco, the sole reason why they started him over AR in the first place was because they believed he gave the Colts the best chance to win. But when you throw 4 interceptions to only 2 touchdowns in your last 2 starts, and the Colts still are losing games, nothing has changed. And when you are a veteran quarterback, you don't expect for them to be throwing, pick sixes early during the game and just having so many turnover issues that they cost you games where you already have a rookie quarterback who had the similar problem. And if you're going to lose, you might as well lose with your younger quarterback. Let Anthony Richardson go out there, get all the development he needs. And if you're able to make it to the playoffs with Anthony Richardson, then cool, because you're not out of it. Believe it or not, you still have a good chance at being able to win the AFC South, because I don't know how many of you guys have been paying attention to the Houston Texans, but they don't look that hot right now. CJ Stroud is in the slump. Their offensive line is terrible. They have no identity on offense. And they're about to get into the tough stretch of their schedule, which gives the Colts a good opportunity to backdoor their way to a potential AFC South title if they can find a way to have an efficient offense with Anthony Richardson, which, if they can run the football well, with Jonathan Taylor and him in the backfield, you got a really good chance of taking away this division from the Texans, because we're at a part of the NFL season now where a lot of these games are going to be cold, and running the football is really important at this time of the season. And when you got two monsters in the backfield, Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson, it makes your offense more physical because you can be a more run-centric team. You can put more emphasis on using design quarterback runs to get Anthony Richardson going early. The thing with Anthony Richardson is that he's not a total terrible quarterback. He does have moments where he's able to make some big throws downfield, when he's able to get outside the pocket and use his God-given athleticism that got him drafted so high by Indianapolis in the first place. This is the perfect time of the season to start using some of Anthony Richardson's athletic gifts, which the Colts, they kind of were a little bit hesitant to run Anthony Richardson so much because he already has been banged up a decent amount of times. But at this point, if Anthony Richardson is going to develop, you need for him to be a reliable runner more than you need him to be a reliable passer, because this guy isn't just magically going to turn into a great passer overnight. And it's not going to happen this season if we're being realistic. Anthony Richardson's growth is going to take place during the offseason. Next year is when we can expect for him to have a 2015 Cam Newton kind of season. But this year, though, the Colts can still find a way to turn their season around, get into the playoffs by winning this division by leaning more heavy into the ground game. And with Anthony Richardson being so big and physical at 255, running 4.43, nobody really wants to tackle this at this time of the year. You think a defensive back 101 wants to see Anthony Richardson in the open field? No, and neither do they want to see Jonathan Taylor in the open field as well. Running the football is what's going to propel Indianapolis to turn their season around possibly. And the thing with Anthony Richardson is that, he needed a little bit of a breather. He had to tap out a few weeks ago. He needed a little bit of rest. So they gave him 2 weeks to think a lot of things over. I was listening to his interview that he just did a few hours ago, his reaction to getting back the starting job. And it seems like he has grown from that experience. And he didn't lose the locker room. A lot of his teammates, after he got benched, they supported him. They gave him words of encouragement, and guys still felt like he was good enough to be the franchise quarterback of the future for this team. So the fact that the locker room still has confidence in him despite him not being that accurate as a passer shows that these guys are willing to put up with some of the growing pains as long as it means that the Colts are better off in the future. So that's definitely something that you love to hear if you're a Colts fan, because now that means that you have a team that is 110% on board with what the future is and direction that this team wants to head. And it's not a surprise that his teammates are in favor of him getting back the job, because when you got a veteran quarterback in Joe Flacco, you can't tolerate the turnovers and the boneheaded mistakes that Joe Flacco was making. And over these past 2 weeks with Anthony Richardson on the bench, everybody got a glimpse of what Joe Flacco truly is. He was a great story, but these last couple of weeks, we found out that he's not Superman, and that's what the Colts thought he was going to be. They thought that benching Anthony Richardson in favor of Joe Flacco would make the offense better than what it was. But all the offense was still stagnant. You were still having a hard time being efficient, scoring in the red zone. So it made a lot of sense to make this move to go back to Anthony Richardson. You can't say Joe Flacco gave this team the best chance to win with how they played these last couple of weeks. It just makes a lot of sense to go back to the younger guy, let him get this experience, and maybe him spending a little bit of time on the bench to reflect can maybe help him become somewhat of a better quarterback now. Because when you have time to reflect on what went wrong, it gives you a little bit of time to have some retrospective about yourself. And when you get benched, it's a good opportunity to look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, how did I get here if you're Anthony Richardson? And what can I do better to not allow a situation like this to occur again? And the Indianapolis Colts at 4-6 right now, you still have a lot of ball left to be played. It's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And around this time is when you want to heat up. This is when you want to play your best football. And the early, mid stages of November is when teams start to separate themselves. And the Houston Texans right now, they haven't separated themselves to the point where you don't have a chance to take this division. They're not playing good football, neither have you. With you playing the New York Jets, you got a chance to right the ship against a team that has a really bad coach and they don't have a good overall team. The Jets are far from that. If anything, the Jets are just one person and a bunch of individuals. The Colts have a team, and by going back to Anthony Richardson, this could give your team a spark that reunites the locker room, brings everybody together, and then eventually you can use this to turn this thing around. But going back to Anthony Richardson was something that had to happen. If you're going to lose games and you're going to tolerate mistakes from anybody at quarterback, you might as well tolerate it from Anthony Richardson.